And welcome to On Digital Media for April 3rd, 2014. I'm your host and executive producer, John Federico, which means I'm the herder of cats. And I've been very successful herding cats this evening because joining me are two of my favorite panelists ever. Calling in from the San Francisco Bay Area is Ms. Shylin Simmons.
Hey, everyone. Meow.
And Mr. Craig Collar calling in from a lot closer from the other side of town.
Greetings and salutations.
Thank you, sir. Oh, my gosh. Put that thing away. You cat person, you. Oh, right. So thanks for joining me today, guys. So what have we been up to? We were talking just before we started here about books. Apparently, we all have a book, a business book, I should say, that we're interested. Well, actually, no, Craig's. Yours isn't quite business, but it's still interesting. We'll start with Shylin. So, Shylin, you were mentioning one that was really interesting.
Sure. So I've been, I've had sort of the good luck of actually having an early sort of peek at a book called Moments of Impact. And yes, it is from a management consultant, so do not hold this against him. Chris Ertl has been a partner with some of the larger sort of, management firms, has been leading Fortune 500 companies for quite a few years. And he's actually a really creative guy. And he's been actually talking about his experiences leading Fortune 500 companies to have much more strategic and creative strategic meetings that actually can accelerate change. Now, we've all been part of strategic meetings, where it feels like you spend a lot of time talking, but nothing really substantial comes out of it from a creativity point of view, or things are extremely creative. And this is actually what Chris talks about. They go out and interview tons of folks, and they talk about sort of the experiences of what it means to run a creative strategic meeting. So
cool. Is there an audiobook?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know that this book itself actually comes with a toolkit. And that's actually very interesting itself. It's very BCG and management consultant, but it's interesting and fun. So I actually enjoy it quite a bit. So
good. Well, there might not be an audiobook, right? Because if there's this toolkit with it, it's kind of hard to appreciate it in audio, but I'll definitely check it out. So it's called, what was it called again?
It's called Moments of Impact.
Moments of Impact by Chris Ertl. Cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'll check that out. Hopefully there's an audiobook, but I'll read it anyway if there isn't. I have not read this book yet, but it came to me highly recommended. And actually, it turns out friend of the show, Phil Simon, has a new book out called The Visual Organization: Data Visualization, Big Data, and the Quest for Better. Sounds very ominous, but it is really all about the use of visual tools. Now, here's a story that was relayed to me from the book by someone who has just started reading it. Apparently, you'll love this, and I want to make sure I get it correct. And if I don't, I'm sorry, but it's more incentive for you to go out and get the book. Apparently, Netflix looked at all of the popular television shows on their platform, and they looked at the colors and the color depth and the scenes, and they used, and all of those colors and depths and everything else, the saturation, were all used in House of Cards. So they took that data and said, what are our most popular shows? And how many and how much of the visual of the cinematic quality can be attributed to the success of those shows? Great. Let's take that cinematic quality and put it into our own our own show in House of Cards. So that's just one example from the book, and that was enough to get me hooked. So
I'm hooked now, absolutely, and now I've got to buy this book, right? So that's brilliant.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. That's The Visual Organization by Phil Simon, and that came recommended to me actually by my friend Todd Hamilton. So, Craig, what's that wonderful piece of literature you were mentioning before?
Well, it just happens to be the last book I read, and it's a little diversion from business and technology. It's called Beyond Belief: My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Escape. And it's by the good thing is it's by Jenna Miscavige. And for those of you who are familiar at all with Scientology, she is the niece of the current leader of Scientology, Tom Cruise's good friend. So it's an inside story. She was born and raised in it, and it's if you have any interest in Scientology, I guess I went to 12 years of Catholic school, so I'm fascinated by cults. This is the book to read. This is the real deal, and it was quite entertaining.
Cool. What's it called again?
Beyond Belief: My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape by Jenna Miscavige Hill.
All right. Well, we know it has a happy ending because she escaped. So
she did escape and wrote a book.
Good. That's so we're three. So I have 3 books I have to read now, which is just more stuff I have to do. But all right. Thank you for that. Now that I have more work. All right. Awesome. Moving on. What happened this week in the world of digital media? Before we get started, because I already did this, and for those little inside baseball, the system we're using here crashed, and so. But a shout out to Rashawn. Rashawn is a longtime listener of ODM, and when he finally discovered that we were back, we got a couple of shout outs from him on Twitter. Thank you, Rashawn, for listening in. We appreciate it. So let's get into it. So a lot of news this week in video what's the phrase these days, Charlene? Is it over the top video? I've heard video over IP. What is it?
I've heard
streaming video,
VoIP video. I've heard everything under the sun, but it's a big week for, connected video, streaming video. I call it streaming video. So
yeah,
big week.
So, yeah. All right, we're gonna do the dramatic build up. We'll save the biggest story for later. So, Awesomeness TV acquires Big Frame. So they're a YouTube network. So distribution is pretty much all YouTube. I don't even know if you can get it through other channels like podcasting or what have you.
I don't think so.
They were bought for $15 million by Awesomeness TV. It's nowhere near the $500 million that Disney paid for Maker Studios. But we're seeing some consolidation, and I don't know, is that good or bad? What do you guys think, the consolidation?
I don't know about the consolidation piece, but what I find fascinating is that a product with basically one distribution channel, has been acquired for $15 million. Now, we've been executives at a variety of different companies. If we actually turn around to a VC and said, hey, look, you know what? I have one distribution channel, and it's basically where I'm hanging my hat on. And in fact, we've actually said this to folks like Zynga, right? Their own one distribution channel was basically on Facebook, and they got penalized for it. And so now we've got a company that, in essence, has one distribution channel that got acquired for $50 million. That is a tremendous exit, by the way, for them. So.
Well, actually, I don't know if it is. I mean, I will say this, right? I think it's a good match. It's a good pairing of companies. Whether or not it was a tremendous exit, I don't know, and I'm going to pull that up right now as we're chatting. But either way, it's good. Oh, of course, this is on Digital Media Wire, and they always make their type so small. It makes me feel old, and I have good eyesight. Yeah, so there's no word on the size of the deal, but Big Frame, the combined entity, will deliver 80 million subscribers and close to 1 billion views a month,
which is amazing. Which is an amazing collaboration. I mean, certainly it's a good partnership.
Well, in a former life, I went through the digital video in the advertising side in the Rich Media. I ran. People don't know this, but that I ran the Rich Media group at DoubleClick, and there was probably 20 different providers, and any industry that has enough providers and there's not enough advertising dollars or media dollars to go around, you have natural consolidation. And I think that's what we're seeing here. That, there's only so many eyeballs online, and, you either get big or go away. And I just think it's a natural.
Yeah, but I thought video ad inventory was at a premium. I thought it was hard to come by. I mean, has that shifted?
Well, it hasn't shifted. It's just that the providers they just consolidated it. It got bigger, and then you have the huge players that are now running it, and DoubleClick was acquired by Google, and you have a couple other players, Tremor, and Brightcove, and those folks, and Brightroll. And there's only there was like 6 companies with the Bright in their name.
Yeah.
Now there's only 3. But yeah, I mean, and the truth is that media buyers don't want to deal with 20 providers. They only want to deal with 2 or 3. So.
Yeah, I mean, as a buyer, that makes sense. But I was just sort of addressing your thought on too many eyeballs or too much inventory, not enough money to go around, and that was really what struck me. Is I think video inventory is still going for a premium. So they might create some efficiencies in production as well as the buying process. But I still think the video average the pre-rolls, mid-rolls are coveted.
I think you're talking. I mean, there's a shortage of quality inventory.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
There's plenty of.
There's plenty of inventory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lots of cat videos. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Don't take the cat out. Interesting. Well, all right. Well, good luck to them. I'm glad to see. I mean, that's a serious reach that those 2 companies are going to have now. So I'm excited. I'm excited for their success. By the way, I should say I've never watched either of them. I'm sad to admit, but I just don't have that kind of time. Ain't nobody got time for that. But speaking of no competition, one distribution channel, Yahoo wants to change that. Yahoo wants to make its own YouTube, or Recode, as Recode called it, YaTube, which I thought was horrible. But
it's the worst name.
It's horrible. Yeah, so they're considering creating a competitor to YouTube. In fact, they're even looking at buying companies that do other types of news distribution. I guess they're figuring just raw, video views might be a way to make this happen. No one has competed with YouTube in years. Can anyone even do this at this point? Are they too big?
Well, this is interesting because if you actually look at the sheer amount of video distribution that currently exists today, in terms of sheer sort of distribution eyeballs, YouTube, AOL actually competes in this particular space, right? Because they have, quite a bit of video inventory across sort of all of the
Yeah, but
properties.
Don't they own all those properties?
They do.
Property? Okay, so that's the difference.
And that is a difference. And so I think this is sort of what's fascinating is, and again, so you wouldn't think of them as sort of competition, but they are. They're competition for ad dollars. And so to the extent that, having a third player in a game and that being YouTube is really interesting because who else is out there really, with a very viable product? I mean, you've got Vivo, but people go to Vivo for new videos, Katy Perry videos. And
right, it's music. Yeah.
It's music, but it actually has not branched out now. It's probably the closest in terms of, I think, that level of expertise and experience outside of AOL as a competition. So Yahoo has got the ad network to do it. Why not? Why not?
And I guess the feeling is that, if Yahoo can grab 5% of the market, that's still significant for them. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that, Google was crazy like a fox. They knew they were going to lose money on YouTube for how many years, and basically just poured dollars in it. And it's still amazing to me and to, I think, a lot of people is the fact that you can, just post your business videos up there and get them hosted for free. It's turnkey and it's great. And it's a great service. Yes, they're monetizing your creative and making money on it. But I mean, just to be able to just throw up a video and then put a link on your site, it's pretty awesome.
It is.
But that's the difference is kind of the, I think Charlene alluded to it. Yahoo's got the ad sales team, right? They've got that infrastructure. They've got the relationships with the agencies, and they have some original content. But there's a rumor that some of that's going to get sunsetted. That is the proper phrase, right? Isn't it? Sunsetted.
Yes. Yes.
And we're not really sure, but there's no one that has the ad infrastructure right now and can compete on sort of with the indie nature of YouTube, right? I mean, just like we post this show to YouTube, we don't make any money from it, really, but not that I know of, anyway. But there's no one that competes with the independent production type, indie video nature of YouTube. I guess that's really what it comes down to.
But I do think that what we haven't also brought up in terms of why this is actually a very interesting idea is that, Tumblr, there's a natural potential synergy between Tumblr and a YouTube-like product.
Very good point, actually. Very good point. I didn't think of that.
It's an excellent match. It's an excellent match.
Well, but there's an actual network out there that specializes in independent video, and it's called Blip TV, and they had to change their model because they couldn't
compete
survive.
with YouTube. Right.
That was a company that should have been bought out very, very early on.
Yeah.
By one of these parties, and perhaps still may, right?
That they may, but yeah, it is interesting because they, as Craig said, I think they might have stayed independent too long.
Absolutely.
No question. And I think their model was they stayed too long with their model, and their model was, it was basically a network designed for, independent filmmakers and film students to, put up your own projects. And then the idea was that then the creators would then distribute the player, right? So that they would be creating, an audience for Blip TV, and that just doesn't scale.
Wait, no. Then that's not necessarily true, because what they basically built out was a video version of SoundCloud, right? And so
that's a good analogy.
I would argue that
sure.
it's a model that works. The question is, in all things, for all things, there's a season, there's a place, there's the right team. I always talk about the three-legged stool of success, right? It's the right product, the right time, and the right team. Arguably, I think that the problem there is that it wasn't the right time and potentially not even the right team. No offense to folks at Blip TV, but were they seasoned enough to make this happen? Should they have sold early? There's a lot of these factors that's unknown, but that model is not flawed because it's working for SoundCloud. So.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the early Silicon Alley startups. The management team clearly was not seasoned enough and was replaced. Now they have some, experienced media people in place, and and I think they're doing better.
The time has passed.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll see. We'll root for them.
Potentially.
They're on the home team, at least for Craig and I.
Absolutely. We should be rooting for them. I remember the original founders, great people.
Yep.
And so, we want to see some success there, and clearly there's consolidation. So
one of my former colleagues from the New York Times is running sales there. So.
Oh, cool. You didn't tell me that. That's good to know. Awesome. All right. So last week, Craig and I talked about, and I was skeptical, and I'm still skeptical. We talked about Facebook on your face, and the Oculus Rift acquisition. Well, this week we're going to take it a bit further. There's a company called Jaunt that just raised a boatload of money. Well, relatively speaking, almost $7 million, so that they can create virtual reality movies. And of course, the photo here on the story is someone using a pair of headphones and the Oculus Rift glasses. Now, who knows if indeed they very well may make them for Oculus Rift. But either way, the concept of virtual reality movies, where are we going with this?
You know where this is going to go.
Yes, I know. Yeah, who's going to say it first?
Come on, I'll say it. Being a woman here, I will say it because perhaps it's a little bit less offensive coming from me. But the first use will come from porn. And because they've always been the first to jump on new technology, this whole concept of stream and buy by minute came out of the porn industry, right? They pioneered that technology. So there you go. I mean, today, a lot of our streaming video business actually came out of some of the early experiments there. So if anybody was going to forge into this area first, you'll see sort of the two divide, right? Which is porn, people will jump on it straight away because that's where they're going to put some money in. And then the extremely high end, the folks who did Cameron, right? Cameron's going to go and do it.
David Cameron.
Oh, there you go.
Or David Cameron. David Cameron.
No. Why am I hate that movie. It's the one with the blue people. Yeah, this is awful. I hate
Yes,
that.
I know. It's one of my. I thought that was a good movie. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Okay.
Ferngully with blue people.
Yeah, all right. Kirk Cameron is dead. Never mind. He's the other one. All right. It's not Cameron.
James Cameron.
James Cameron. Thank you. All right. Sorry, James. Yes. All right. But here's the thing, though. It requires this what looks to be a very expensive 360-degree camera. So it's not that the Jaunt people, although I'm sure they will, right? They're creating the technology, not necessarily the creative juices that are going to get people interested. Although I did just use the phrase creative juices after talking about the porn industry. But anyway, yes, okay, fine. We know what industries will jump into this. But still, this is a pretty sophisticated piece of tech. So, it's not going to be your I'm trying to quote a name and I have no idea who's big in porn. So it's not going to be some guy with a camera that's using this. It's going to be one of the larger, adult film studios because they're going to be the first ones to be able to afford it.
God, I feel so bad because I feel like I know actually who the big developers of porn.
And I don't. There you go.
And I just want to say, just to exculpate myself, that actually when I was at Audible, we looked at working with.
Oh, right. I remember that.
Vivid Studios, yes. We assigned it to the woman to look at partnerships with the porn industry, right? So to me, and so Vivid Studios is one of the largest. They've actually have productions that cost for the porn industry significantly in a million range, right? So they will be the people who will basically invest in this technology. And, you can see sort of, again, the James Camerons, the porn industry, and potentially even the medical industry, right? So this is sort of where the triangulation sort of occurs typically with, virtual reality products, right? So.
But this goes back to, and I'm gonna poke Craig on this one. This goes back to my argument last week. Is the average consumer though gonna spend the money to do this? First of all, movie watching, generally speaking, is a social thing. So am I going to sit there with my family and all three of us are going to have these headsets on and we're all going to experience the movie from a different angle? I mean, it's cool. It just doesn't seem, I don't know. It seems a little off to me.
No, I don't think so. But, it's going to be a fad and some early adopters will buy it and then they'll figure out a way where you can see it without the headset. And I don't know. Has anybody ever seen what does 3D TV look like? You don't have to wear glasses or anything for that, do you?
Yeah, you do. You do.
Yeah, you do.
Wear glasses. I mean, the glasses that look less geeky, but you still have to wear glasses, and that's sort of where the dilemma comes in because you've got if you've ever seen people watching 3D movies together, it's basically a whole bunch of people like this, and there's no interaction.
Right.
And if you ever watch a movie at home with your family, there's a lot of joshing, a little chit chat going on. That completely is stopped when you watch 3D television. There's something very strangely isolating when you're on a couch with a bunch of people and everybody's got the goggles on, right?
I think it was kind of like, what were those isolation tanks where you float and, complete silence. And, that was like hot for a couple of years. And then people are just like, I think that this is just a step in a more immersive experience, and they'll figure out a way to do it without having to wear a headset. I'm not sure how, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, I say, it's going to be porn industry, James Cameron, the gaming industry, and the medical device industry.
Well, I will say though, my father is an electrical engineer. He worked for North American Rockwell in the aerospace industry. And he always told me that, when computers first came out and I used to complain how expensive they were. And he's like, one of these days you're going to be able to walk into a hardware store and they're going to have a roll of plastic and you're just going to tell them how big you want your screen. And they're going to cut you off a big square and you're going to take it home and put it up and then plug it in. And that'll be your screen. It'll be, a piece of tubes. And so you're basically going to do that. So imagine when we get to that point where screen material is cheap enough where you can almost create a room where you're completely surrounded by a screen without having to wear the duck goggles, and then you could sit in a room with your family and do it. It's just a question of price. They have to get the technology down to an acceptable price to move on.
Oh, it's getting there. I mean, I have a 32-inch television, which is why nobody stole my TV during a burglary. And so I recently went to a Costco's and realized that, in fact, what we bought our 32-inch screen for several years ago, you can now get a 40 plus size screen, and it looked beautiful, and it was 1080p too. 1080p, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was gorgeous. So,
yeah, the costs just keep coming down.
Exactly.
We got 2 years ago, we got a 55-inch Vizio at Costco for just under $1,000, which was a great deal at the time. My neighbor just bought, I couldn't believe this, a 70-inch TV, a Vizio from, I forget where, for less than $2,000. And it's ginormous, as you can imagine. And it would look ridiculous in our house. We could never have it. But it was beautiful, and it was thin, and yeah. So the whole idea of wallpapering your room with screens, Craig, yeah, it'll come. I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, e-paper. Actually, if you think about that for a minute, right?
Yeah, it's very similar.
E-paper.
Very similar concept.
Right. You could almost do that now. I mean, obviously, I don't know what the power requirements would be and the drivers you would need and all that, but it's thin and color, and you can get it in color, so it's not very saturated. We're there. We're almost there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So 3D, so virtual reality movies, I don't know. We'll see. But the bet, of course, is Shailene, who's going to do it first? Is it going to be James Cameron or porn industry? Who's going to be first?
Porn.
Yeah,
porn.
I know. That's what I would have said too.
So,
All right.
Because the geeks who are going to buy it are all the nerds who sit home and watch porn. But honestly, I don't know about you, but I think 3D movies in the movie theater suck. I don't.
Yeah, I have to say. I mean, anything, of course, to get you to pay more. You're right, to go to the theater. And I can't say, I've been to some 3D movies where 3D was a major component of the production, where they really took it into consideration in as many scenes as possible. I've also been to films 3D movies, where I'm sitting there and there are basically 2 moments in the entire film that were optimized for 3D, and everything else might as well have just been without the glasses. So, it depends. I think it varies.
I just remember as a kid going to the movies and they had, I can't remember which one it was. It was a Vincent Price movie where they would throw knives and it would come into the, the audience and poke stuff into the audience. And it hasn't really got a lot beyond that. The only movie that I really felt the 3D added to it was Life of Pi. I thought that was a good use. And you could tell that they really built that or created that movie with 3D in mind.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and of course, I'll never get to experience it in 3D because once you're out of the theater, it's very difficult to kind of make that happen. So, but I still on my list. It's on my it's in my Netflix queue. So
it's a good movie, 3D or not.
Cool. All right, so the big news in video this week: the capper. Do you feel the dramatic tension that we built there? No, not really. But anyway, we knew this was coming. We talked about it last week. The only thing that did surprise me is the form factor. We'll get into that. Amazon launches Amazon Fire TV. So this
stories that make Steve uncomfortable.
Yeah, stories that make Steve uncomfortable. But he's not here now. He's playing basketball, bastard. So stories that, yes. So that's actually fine. We can talk about it now because he's not here. It shipped. Start over. It's a box. It looks like a slightly squarish, more squarish. It doesn't look like a hockey puck. It looks a little bit bigger and a little more square than an Apple TV. It's $99. Everyone thought it was going to be a dongle, like the Chromecast or the Roku, and we were proven wrong. But here's what's cool about it. Shailene, you'll like this part. What's the coolest part about this one? What else does it do?
So this is me, and so the single most important piece of this for me is not let's do another Hulu, Netflix, Vimeo, blah, blah. It's a fact that you could actually bring Android games on there. So it's actually competing against 2 fronts, Apple TV and Xbox and everybody else. So, woohoo.
Yeah, that was a big deal. They have a controller. You can buy a controller, which it looks like an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller. You can buy that. That's an additional fee. I think it's $40. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, it's $40. Yeah. But the games. So some of these, Disney, Ubisoft, and EA are going to be creating games. The games are starting at $1.85.
It's running around the Android mobile sort of gaming price, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's where they have to start.
Yeah, I guess. But what kind of games from EA are you going to get for $1.85? I don't think that's happening.
Oh, I don't. You see, for years, EA's been trying to push into sort of the casual gaming space. And so here's yet another shot for them to really try to do something spectacular here, and hopefully they don't miss, right? So, I mean, they need to do something here. I mean, I think this is their next chance. So,
is it Madden 2022?
Oh God. It's got to be some sort of like pared down version of a Madden. I don't know. I will tell you. I mean, it will be interesting to see how this evolves, right? Because it's got a richer sort of screen and platform experience than your Android phone, which I have in my hand. My phablet is big, but yet somehow the gaming experience is not probably going to be as robust as on, this particular experience. So. Yeah.
Well, they showed Minecraft Mobile, playing on it. I only saw screenshots, but again, it's Minecraft Mobile. What's the comparison between Minecraft Mobile and the Minecraft you play on a console or a PC? Actually, it's not even out for the consoles yet, but is it? I don't know. But anyway, what's the difference? That's what I'm curious to know. How robust it's going to be.
I think that particular game is probably not the best example around sort of how to differentiate. I think you're going to see a whole series of developers out there now who are going to basically take a look at the Android platform and basically say, look, I have one core story idea. And so now I have the capability to develop a story idea that actually has a faster pace moving sort of like storytelling in a mobile tablet experience. And then one that's a richer, more immersive experience, potentially in a console and intermediate sort of like state product like this, Amazon Fire product. I mean, you're already seeing it with companies like, console TV, iConsole.tv, where they're looking at really fast chips. They're trying to do Android games where, you could do one development storyline, storyboarding core, and you could basically develop for a faster moving chip for some of these items, right? And so also then, quote unquote, dumb it down or at least change and pivot the stories around that fits a much more sort of small tablet experience. I think you're going to see studio houses start looking at how do you basically bring a multi-platform sort of experience and develop a linear story that can tie all of those experiences together. And your playing experience it's the same storyline, but your play experience is different. Maybe it's a first shooter, on this, but it's an immersive role play on a console or Amazon Fire. Right. So I think there's opportunities there. It really should spark the creative juices, I hope. So.
Well, I hope so too. But the thing I think it's I think it does afford opportunity. But the thinking that the real point that comes to mind is that this is yet more Android fragmentation, right? It's a forked version of Android that Amazon has sandboxed, and they have complete control over. And so it just becomes one more thing that developers have to code for and worry about. And I don't know if that's necessarily good for the platform.
It is true. I mean, I'll be very honest in saying that when we were doing development work for Android, there is always a version that you have to make basically for the Amazon Fire Kindle, right? So we opted not to play in that sandbox because it was, there's just some things that don't really work well in that particular environment. And so, Amazon is putting its own sandbox in place, for all intents and purposes. But I think that they've also got enough of attraction to date that you can't ignore that anymore, right? So,
yeah, it's true. I mean, they're a player. It's Amazon.
Exactly.
So other interesting things about this, though, which it has the requisite apps on it that you would expect. Although, and I guess it kind of has to, right? Even though Amazon has their Amazon Video. Right, their Prime Video, which we've talked about in the past, even just recently. You can also get Netflix, Hulu, MLB, Watch ESPN, Vimeo, NBA, YouTube. So all the things you'd expect. Basically, it's an Apple TV. I mean, anything you would get on an Apple TV or Roku, you're going to get here.
But let's call a spade a spade. This is a shot across the bow to Netflix. They are saying
to Netflix, really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Netflix doesn't have their own hardware. I mean,
exactly. This. I'm looking at how Amazon's Fire TV could be a huge threat to Netflix. I mean, they are. They've
got Netflix on the box, though. I mean, they're offering Netflix
just to probably avoid, lawsuits. It's that they're gonna. Prime is going to be front and center on this thing, and it's
it is. It is.
It is.
And not only that, but a trusted friend who's already apparently checked this out. He's a parent, and so Josh Weinberg was saying that one of the biggest, areas of major fail is that basically, typically when you put kids in front of a Netflix, everything is free. Right, in a streaming perspective. And so, Amazon has a dual sort of issue of there's the Prime free and then there's the pay for per transaction product, and they meld together, and they basically meld those together or put the pay products first. And so it gets very confusing for kids to figure out what you want or what you don't want. And so the question then would be is what are they trying to do at Amazon? Is the idea that these are vehicles to basically purchase more digital items, or is it much like Apple? Apple's agenda has always been very clear. They're selling more and more hardware products. And yes, the digital product is a ever increasing part of their revenue, but where is Amazon's position here? If I was Netflix, I would see this as a shot across the bow, but I would also look at it as this, my competition is spending money doing hardware and they're going to be divided. I pour my money into basically doing better and better shows. That's actually viable for people to want to come because
absolutely. I think that, Netflix will be on solid ground as long as they keep creating good original programming. But, I think that, we've talked about it before on this show that Amazon is definitely in that business now, and they've created some good original programs, and it's getting better every year. And I think that they're all in on this, and owning the box gives them an additional advantage.
At what point do you basically get fractured around sort of where your emphasis sort of lie in, right? Because, if you're too busy selling the devices, selling e-commerce, selling all of those things, basically where's sort of the focus?
Does it hurt them that they sell Kindle as well as ebooks? I mean, it helps them.
I think that what it does is it's a resource issue. It's that basically the way that Amazon is structured organizationally as well. It's all man for themselves at Amazon, right? You're fighting for resources internally, for technology resources, financial resources. And so, I do not deny that I think that the Amazon shows are getting better and better, but that there's a differentiation where Netflix firmly believes that the original program is going to be the key differentiator for them as a service, right? And their eyes are on the prize around basically being better than HBO. And so what is Amazon? Are they trying to be better than HBO? Are they a retailer? What exactly are they? They become a much more, the teams internally become much more fractured around basically looking for resources. And it may be that those instant original products don't get the sort of level of investments after the newness wears off, right? So, and that would be my concern.
I don't know. I've seen Amazon. I mean, from what I have seen, Amazon has invested wisely in their original programming, and it shows. And I mean, I can't say over the inside the company what's going on, but I think it makes perfect sense that they are a distributor. They're a channel of content, and it makes perfect sense to me that they move in this direction. And I don't think they're going to put Netflix out of business, but they're going to give them a run for their money.
Honestly, I'm bullish. I've always been bullish on Amazon. Will continue to forever be bullish on Amazon because they are smart. And even the way that they approach original program is uniquely Amazon, right? So make the pilots all available and let their consumers choose. And this is a very different tactic than Netflix.
And make it free. And make it free for Prime people, which
Absolutely.
Is even better.
And I will pay the money to stay as a Prime. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a given. I think the one place where Netflix doesn't compete well here, right, is that everything on Netflix is subscription based and bundled. Whereas so basically anything that's already available on Netflix for free is also available on Amazon Prime Video for free. But then Amazon has the additional benefit of, for me as the consumer, being able to rent or buy video. Netflix has none of that. There's no commerce component. You either have a subscription or you don't. It's either available as part of the bundle or it's not. And so, I think that could hurt them over time.
That's a very good point.
The only thing you can't get is the Netflix original program. You cannot get House of Cards or Orange.
Well, again, it's HBO versus video on demand is what it comes down to. And then Amazon is trying to be both. I mean, it's really so, right? Apple TV is video on demand, and then Netflix is HBO, and Amazon is trying to straddle both, right? So they have the original programming, they have a free component, and then they have a la carte items that that haven't been licensed.
And in fact, actually, it's worked against them, right? And this is where it's the single most telling piece of it. So let me give you an example. I've been watching an excellent show called The Americans, right? 80s spy sort of Russian thing. And so the differentiation here is that, today, if you go on Amazon Prime, you could actually watch season 1 completely under Prime and then also buy the season pass for the new show. Right. And so because CBS is looking at this, or Fox is looking at this saying, look, we could do both. We could basically sell a card because, it's worth us licensing this to Amazon in order to basically sell the season pass. And so you could do that, I believe, on Amazon and potentially as well as in iTunes, but you cannot get the first season at all for free on Netflix. And so I see myself increasingly using things like Hulu and Amazon, whereas before I was predominantly sort of focused on Netflix for catching up on series television. So
right, we're the same way. And now that they have AirPlay support on the Amazon app, because we are an Apple TV house, right? The Roku died, and the new Apple TV came out, so we got one. And I stayed away from Amazon Prime because I had to connect my laptop to the TV, which was a pain in the ass. But now I have my iPad mini and I just push it to, over AirPlay to the Apple TV. And, we find ourselves more and more watching video on Amazon via the iPad. So.
My Samsung TV has it built in. So I watch the Amazon Prime directly on the smart TV app, whatever. But one of the great things about this Fire TV that got my attention is the controller, because the smart TV controller that I have is so clumsy. It's like ridiculous to have to hunt around and letter by letter and do it. It's just, supposedly this is more like a smartphone where it knows what you're searching for and pre-populates, and supposedly is a much better experience and moves away from that archaic TV. Even on, the DVR boxes, searching for shows letter by letter is ridiculous. Somebody's got to fix that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is why, we have our Apple TV, and it comes with that very simple, elegant aluminum remote. But the reality is that I use it only for stops and starts, right? Everything else, we're like finding something or etc., I use the Apple remote on my iPhone. Because otherwise, really, my God, it's just painful when you try to search for something and move around. Oh, just even little things like parental controls. It's only 4 digits, but I have to cycle through, all 9 or 10, I guess, 0. I have to cycle through all digits just to get past that versus just typing it on my phone. So yeah, it's definitely, it requires lots of improvements, and ideally smartphones will take the place of it, of the standard remote. All right. It looks like, wow. Well, actually, I'm actually quite enjoying this conversation. But in the interest of time, I don't think we're going to get to all of our stories, especially the vomiting on the bus window. No.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're not going to get that. We're going to go to one I think that kind of picks up on it's definitely more the heart of digital media versus the stuff that's going on, the backlash in tech. The new Microsoft. So Craig, we talked last week about Office for iPad. So it's been a week.
Yeah.
How many downloads? How many downloads do you think? You might already know because I may have said it before. How many downloads?
I don't know. Tell me, John. I'm assuming a lot, but I've heard mixed reactions to it.
Well, it's been downloaded over 12 million times already.
Okay, I buy that.
12 million times, and it's on its way to being one of the most popular downloads in the App Store. But I'm not sold. So back to you. So what have you heard about it? I mean,
I've heard that it's great. It's to be able to look at Excel documents on your iPad, but if you're a power user, what's the point? Because you can't use any of the keyboard commands that Windows users are used to, and so it's kind of like, yeah, it's great for free, but I would never pay for it.
Well, and not only pay for it, you're paying $120 a year for it. Yeah. All right, granted, it's not just the iPad version. Let's be clear, right? You pay for a subscription to their, oh my gosh, it's escaping me. Whatever their online service is, so that their subscription service. So that means you get, with that subscription, you also get it on your desktop as well as your iPad, and you even get collaborative web-based versions of it, right? Actually, all the versions are collaborative, but you get a web-based version of it. So it's not just that. But $120 a year for word processing and Excel,
and the Google version is free, and it works, and
it's not great, but it works.
Yeah. It's not great, but it works. It's a little too too late, as they say, I think.
Well, and my daughter, who's in college, uses the Google Suite exclusively. I think they're the first generation that has been brought up using the Google Suite as opposed to Office. And so, I think for, when this group moves into the workforce, Office is going to be irrelevant to them.
Right. So who's it good for, right? If you're a person who owns an iPad, and maybe you've brought your own to the corporation, right? BYOD, right? Bring your own device. Or your company has bought iPads, whatever, and you're tied to the Office, ecosystem. Then this is perfect for you. Even if you pay for it yourself, right? $10 a month, $120 a year is not. It's not a drop in the bucket, but it's also not going to necessarily break the bank for some people. And if it makes them more productive, I could see that happening. But, where it's not, right, are all those people who just have to crank out a quick document or do a quick spreadsheet. There are just so many other things out there at this point, and they're never going to get those people back.
You're not doing pivot tables on an iPad.
No.
And also, remember, it really actually needs to the adoption is going to come out of the fact that it seems to basically pitch that this is potentially a little bit more secure, right? Because to date, just about every corporate IT experience I know frowns upon us using Google Docs overall. And we all do it. That's sort of the big open secret is like we all do Google Doc collaboration under the watchful eyes of our IT departments. And so theoretically speaking, this is sort of the alternative, and that's how we're all going to be forced to use this, paid for by ourselves and or by the corporation. Now, arguably, you will see the adoption sort of increase through that sort of methodology, which is saying, look, I got to have some kind of online collaboration product. And so, if they won't let me use Google, at least this passes the IT sniff test.
I think it's just a legacy of IT departments that those people have been brought up to know how to use Microsoft products and Exchange servers, and that's all they know, and that's all they'll work on. And in fact, I'm dealing with that right now after spending 4 years in the startup world where everybody is on, corporate Google Mail and Google Docs, and it's just like such a, back to the future type experience that, I just can't see it continuing.
Well, but it better for their, for their sake, right? I mean, Microsoft's bread and butter is Office and Windows, and the world is changing. Here's another great example of that. So earlier this week, Microsoft had their Build conference, their annual Build conference, and their new CEO, Satya Nadella, came out, and apparently, people said that they used words like humble when describing not just Satya, but also the other executives that came out. Humble and, wanting to bring good solutions to developers rather than getting developers to come to them. Lots of things like that. But again, back to the world changing. That's just that's one way.
That's just the anti-bomber,
Yeah, well, if anyone is the anti-bomber, it is the new CEO. But listen to this, right? Windows 8.1, which is it's not exactly merged, but it's Windows Phone and Windows Tablet, I guess you could call it. It's free. It's going to be free to manufacturers, to OEMs, for any device with a screen smaller than 9 inches. Like, does that sound like the Microsoft of the days of yore? Never.
Mm-hmm.
But
and the fact that there's consolidation and sort of collaboration between the Windows Mobile team and the core, Windows product.
Well, yeah, talk about that. The right ones run.
Huge.
Yeah.
But isn't it just more of the case of Windows Mobile being a dismal failure?
It's been a dismal failure for years, and yet they've never given up on it, right? And to the extent that there's much more synergy amongst the different silos within Microsoft to sort of try to, graft the baby brother onto the older brother for success, that's a pretty big thing for them.
That sounds really gross, by the way.
That sounds horrible. I'm so sorry. It's getting late. Yeah. So,
but it's more about just having their lunch eaten by first, the iPhone and then Android, and I don't know.
But they're taking good steps. This is what we discussed last week, and it's continuing this week. For instance, Sherilyn alluded to it, but I'll just put a finer point to it. They also have this opportunity now to bring developers back to the platform where they can write a core code base that will run on Windows and Windows Mobile and Xbox. And so, and Sherilyn has said this all the time, and there it is. So think about that for a moment, the power of that. And that's instead of Microsoft saying this is the way it's going to be, they're saying, oh, we hear you. We understand that one of the reasons you're writing for the iPhone is because it's so easy, because there are only a few target devices. We hear that. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're only going to give you, all right, obviously there's more than 3 target devices, but there's 3 target operating systems or environments, for lack of a better term. And they're simplifying in order to get people on board. That's huge.
It's a very big deal.
Do you think Steve Ballmer would ever have done that? Come on.
No, this is with the new CEO that in essence has been here for less than 6 months, right? He is actually taking
6 days. They're saying 6 days or something.
Exactly. Which is bullshit, right? Like, let's be honest, right? But I mean, under 6 months, he's completely changed the way that they've looked at how they deal with platform development. And so that is a huge thing. I mean, platform development, it feels like in Microsoft, having worked with them for multiple years and across multiple sort of silos within them, they ran their own businesses, and when they, compete against each other, it's, struggle to the death, Hunger Games between the 2 different divisions, right? About who's going to adopt, which platform, and they'll fight against each other within the same corporation. And here, this is an amazing opportunity for them to actually build a multi-channel platform for development, and that's huge.
Well,
that's
to
really
Steve
huge.
Ballmer's credit, he's the one who came up with the One Microsoft, moniker for the reorganization, and so, yeah, maybe this is it. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be the silver bullet, but I like this is me, not a Microsoft fanboy talking here, saying, wow, I'm impressed. Like they're making some good moves.
John, the Microsoft anti-fanboy is just complete credit to Microsoft.
I have to say, I give credit where credit is due, and I'm impressed. I mean, let's take it a step further. They're building a version. They're building a version of the Microsoft Outlook Web Access for Android. So not just all the iPad stuff. They're actually going to allow you to get at Outlook Web Access on your Android device. Like, hello, mind blown. Like, I just never saw it happening.
Okay, I just put a link in our chat, so you guys look. Tell me he's not channeling Steve Jobs.
Oh,
Dude.
that photo? Yeah, totally.
Oh my God.
But it also doesn't hurt that he's tall and fit and thin, and whereas none of the Microsoft's previous CEOs were either any of those things. So but you're right. He does seem to be, at least that photo, shows him to be that way.
He's got a wiry, lean, sort of intense gaze that's very, very job-ish. It works. It's good for him, And if you could take a page out of that, that's fantastic. So and he's certainly channeling Steve Jobs in terms of look and across the stage than perhaps Tim is.
Yeah, Tim Cook certainly isn't doing it, so somebody might as well.
Yeah, he's not, but he's got his own thing going on.
Exactly.
Tim's a good, I think he's a good leader and a good spokesperson for the company. He does.
Agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, so I think I think we're gonna leave it with Microsoft this week, of all things, but in a positive way, in a good way. Instead, we're not beating up Microsoft in the show. We're actually holding them up and for you all to consider them, and that's a good thing. So
absolutely.
All right. So before we go, I want to say if anyone wants to reach out to you guys and say thank you for doing the show this week, how can they do that? Shailin, we'll start with you.
Sure. You can find me at Shailin Simmons, ChialinSimmons, on my website.com or via Twitter. Same spelling, same everything.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Calder, how can people reach out to you?
Craig at craigcalder.com. C. Calder on all the social media channels.
All the social media channels, including Snapchat?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Well, sounds good. Sure. All right. And, of course, I'm John Federico. You can find me pretty much everywhere as Gadget Boy on the Twitters and the Facebooks and all that.
In France, are you Gadget Boy?
I'm Gadget Boy, yes. There's an aigu. Anyway. So thanks for joining us. This episode of On Digital Media has come to an end. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.